A new report on combating the big business of wildlife crime says follow the money. Kenya joins 10 other African countries and bans plastic bags. And Dubai edges closer to its goal of launching hover taxis. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Esther Gidu. You are in for Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. Global crime syndicates are behind the illegal trade in ivory, rhino horn, and protected wildlife artifacts. A new report from a London research organization says to stop this trade, investigators need to track the money to bring the heads of the crime groups to justice. VOA's senior analyst Jeffrey Young has our report, and we want to warn you that some of the scenes are graphic.
The illegal trade in wildlife products is a transnational organised crime, and we must not lose sight of that fact. Like drugs, like weapons, it's transnational, it's organised.
Tom Keating with the London-based Royal United Services Institute, RUSI, along with co-author Kathy Heinlein, spent the past 18 months following the money gained by killing elephants, rhinos, and other species in Africa to the shops of East Asia. Their new paper, Follow the Money, says that while prosecuting poachers and seizing wildlife artifacts are important, halting the trade requires tracking financial flows to identify the people at the top of the business.
Anything that moves across border, across thousands of miles between East Africa and Asia, will have a related financial flow. And so looking at the finances can be a very effective way of identifying the kingpins behind this business.
Interpol and the UN Environment Program have said this wildlife crime, ranging from killing for ivory, rhino horn, and animal skins to the taking of rare species for pets, is worth between $7 billion and $23 billion a year. However, the UN Office on Drugs and Crime says it's nearly impossible to quantify the trade because many African countries don't separately tally crimes against wildlife. Because of the substantial cash value of wildlife and their artifacts, the heads of the crime syndicates have well-packed pockets not only to buy the goods, but also to pay off officials to get their goods to Asian markets. Via Skype from Nairobi, Michael Wamithi of the Wildlife Justice Commission.
Someone has to be wealthy enough or organized enough to spend millions of dollars, $5-6 million at a time to organize a big consignment to leave Africa to go to Southeast Asia.
With so much money on the line, the smuggler networks do not want conservationists and others getting in their way. Last month, Wayne Lauder, co-founder of the conservation group PAMS Foundation, was gunned down in Tanzania in what police say was a coordinated attack. Lauder was one of the people responsible for the arrest of Yang Fanlan, the so-called Ivory Queen, accused of running a multi-million-dollar ring smuggling ivory. The RUSI report says several African nations, including Tanzania, Kenya, and Uganda, do not use their money laundering laws effectively in the fight against the wildlife trade. The report says that many law enforcement agencies don't go beyond catching poachers and confiscating the artifacts. RUSI's Keating says police should put pressure on low-level participants to reach the money people at the top of the chain.
Use his financial connections to determine who does he work for, who pays his legal bills, who pays his bail and his fine if he's sentenced. So there's much more that finance can do to help tackle this trade.
The RUSI report concludes that wildlife traffickers, like other criminals, depend on the ability to move money and to hide the proceeds of the business. It calls on states to change their money laundering laws to include prosecution for cash gained through wildlife crime. Jeffrey Young, VOA News.
Fighting broke out in Uganda's parliament for a second day between lawmakers pushing for a change in laws to remove age limits for presidential candidates and those opposing it. A Reuters journalist present in parliament says he saw microphone stands being used as weapons and at least 2 female lawmakers being carried out after collapsing. People exchanged blows and kicks after security personnel were called in to remove lawmakers who had been ordered out of the chambers. At least 25 members of parliament opposed to the legislative move were ordered to vacate the chambers by the Speaker after being suspended for their involvement in Tuesday's fighting. Presently, eligibility to stand as a presidential candidate has an age ceiling of 75, which makes Yoweri Museveni, 73, ineligible to seek re-election in 2021. Now, South Africa's biggest union group held marches nationwide on Wednesday to protest what it says is chronic corruption fueled by President Jacob Zuma and a prominent family of businessmen, reflecting public anger over a scandal that has ensnared several international companies. The protest by the Congress of South African Trade Unions in Johannesburg and other cities come amid a past struggle within the ruling African National Congress Party. Some former loyalists in the ANC are calling for Zuma's ouster as a way to restore confidence in the party, even though the president's second five-year term is slated to run until elections in 2019. The demonstrations by thousands of members of the union group, which once supported Zuma, are unlikely to pose an immediate threat to the president, who retains the support of powerful factions within the ruling party. Now, a Libyan Coast Guard vessel fired warning shots and boarded a humanitarian ship in the Mediterranean on Tuesday, demanding that the migrants on board be handed over to them. Axel Steyer, a spokesman for a German-based charity, the Mission Lifeline, said the Libyan Coast Guard fired shots into the air as they approached, but no one was injured. Afterward, 2 Libyans boarded the Lifeline ship to try to persuade them to hand over some 70 migrants they had just rescued off a wooden boat in international waters. Italy's Coast Guard, which coordinates rescue efforts in the region, has declined to comment. Financed, trained and equipped by Italy, the Tripoli-based Coast Guard is intercepting a growing number of migrant boats. Now, teachers and volunteers in Egypt are using patience and kindness in a bid to educate some of the children of the many refugee families from nearly a dozen African countries. International organizations like the UN Refugee Agency, church groups and other local NGOs also contribute in the struggle to educate the children. Edward Yeranian reports from Cairo.
African refugee students have the same hopes and dreams of young people the world over, but they also face numerous challenges that their more fortunate counterparts elsewhere can only guess at. Chris Rupke, an educator at the African Hope School in the Cairo suburb of Maadi, tells VOA that African refugee children he works with have often lost one or both of their parents and are living with extended family members.
A good portion of them, I don't have the exact numbers, but a good portion of them would not have a mother and a father. Some of them have a mother, some of them have a father, some of them might be living with aunts or uncles, or some of them might be living with tribal members and they call them aunts or uncles.
Rupke says that one little boy was so traumatized by what he had gone through back home that he was unable to speak until a psychologist at the school got him to draw pictures of what had happened.
And so we had a psychologist that came and was supporting us, a volunteer, and she had him draw pictures. And what he drew was his village. She asked him, draw your village. And he drew his village, and he drew his father and his mother and his siblings, and they were in pieces. When she said, "Where's your father?" he pointed to some pieces on the ground.
Jean P., a teacher at the African Hope School, tells VOA that when he began teaching at the school in 2003, he and his colleagues went looking for African refugee children under Cairo's bridges and in its public gardens. He learned how to persuade them to come to school.
We have a school here, it's free, so we can put you there and we talk, there's food, and when they hear about food, then they come.
African refugee families often struggle to put food on the table. NGOs like Refuge Egypt, run by the Anglican Church in Cairo, helps them with free sugar, flour, cooking oil, and free medical treatment at a health clinic it runs. Despite the struggles to cope with life in exile, most refugee children relish the opportunity to go to school. They love to play with their schoolmates, to have fun, and to learn. Quarters are cramped and students attend 2 different sessions, but teachers work hard to help them to learn and do it with love.
And we do know that the students love to come here because they know it's a safe place. And it is a place that they will see love. They will see teachers that care about them and love them and are here to help them to grow into young men and young ladies that are able to make responsible decisions in life.
Ready? Go! Edward Uranian for VOA News, Cairo.
The U.S. Supreme Court has removed President Donald Trump's travel ban from its October docket after the president issued new travel rules on Sunday. Timed when part of the original travel ban was expiring, the rules expand the list of countries affected, and this time the restrictions do not expire but could last indefinitely. VOA's Molly McTerrick reports.
As widely expected, the new travel restrictions target perceived individual threats by individual country. Specifically, the new rules suspend entry into the U.S. of immigrants and non-immigrants from Chad, Libya, and Yemen on business, tourist, or family visas. Block entry of Iranian citizens, but provide an exception for Iranian students with additional screening. Bar immigrants and visitors from North Korea and Syria. Prevent immigration by citizens of Somalia and subject visitors to enhanced screening. Keep out certain Venezuelan government officials and their families on business, tourist, and family visas. Remove Sudan from the list. At an immigration law conference at Georgetown University Monday, the travel ban was a hot topic of conversation. While President Donald Trump's proclamation said he must act to protect the security of the United States, some questioned his motives.
There are real threats in the world, and there are individuals that we have to keep a watch on. But the problem here is that sometimes measures like these happen in a larger context of nativism and xenophobia, and when that happens, it's sometimes hard to distinguish whether this has real national security drivers or there are other considerations at play too.
Trump said the new restrictions will remain in effect until the countries in question improve their security screening.
The way that the travel order has been placed is that countries have to meet a minimum baseline requirement and also be part of sharing information. Over this last period of time, they've stepped up and met those baseline requirements that the United States has laid out.
The rules are subject to periodic government review and may face court challenges if not at the Supreme Court level. The Supreme Court had been prepared to hear arguments about the legality of Trump's executive order, but the revised version may call for a new case starting in the lower courts.
Well, what is going to happen in the Supreme Court now that the travel ban has changed? I think if you stick around and listen today, you're going to hear opinions going all different directions. It's a complex issue because of the changes in the travel ban, because of the parties involved are not going to want it to go away necessarily, but it's a new ban and it's going to have to be looked at on its own.
Meanwhile, the expiring part of the old travel ban has been reinstated, and the new expanded travel rules take effect October 18th. Molly McKitterick, VOA News, Washington.
Saudi Arabia's king has given women the go-ahead to legally drive for the very first time. Prince Khalid bin Salman, Saudi Arabia's ambassador to Washington and the king's son, says it's the right time to do the right thing. The royal decree announced on Saudi state media now allows women to obtain driving licenses. There were never any laws prohibiting women from driving in the past, but they were not issued licenses and were detained if they attempted to drive. Saudi Arabia has been widely criticized for being the only country in the world that bans women from driving, despite ambitious government targets to increase their public role, especially in the workforce. The decree takes effect in June 2018. We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Coming up, a look at how the world's toughest law against plastic bags is working in Kenya. Stay with us.
My name's Carla Babb, and I work the Pentagon beat. That access helps me to do better stories. Every day it's my responsibility to collect all of the defense news. It keeps our VOA viewers informed. I get to travel all across the globe. Anything that's defense related and how to protect and keep people safe, that's where I'll go. So it's never a dull moment at the Pentagon. My name is Carla Babb. This is my beat.
How do you see the world?
I see countries in turmoil.
I see our planet changing.
I see people at peace.
No matter how you see the world, you'll get an unbiased and uncensored view of it on Voice of America. On television, radio, online, and mobile. In more than 40 languages all day, every day. Millions of people tune us in.
How do I see the world? On Voice of America.
I'm Jeff Selden, and I work the National Security Beat. National Security Beat is anything that affects the national security of the United States, from counterterrorism to surveillance to even relations with Russia. It's one of the most fascinating beats you can have. It's probably one of the more important beats that you can cover because it touches on so many areas of the world, so many areas of people's day-to-day lives. I'm Jeff Selden, and my beat is national security.
Last month, Kenya joined 10 other African countries that are trying to control an avalanche of plastic waste. It is part of a growing international trend to tax or even ban the plastic bags that are a big part of the worldwide explosion of trash. It is a good environmental move, but many argue it will cost many money and jobs. VOA's Kevin Enochs reports.
Based on data compiled by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the world uses between 50 billion and 1 trillion plastic bags every year. And each one can live in a landfill for thousands of years. That's why Kenya banned them in August.
It's the constitutional right of every Kenyan to live within a clean and secure environment.
But Kenyan officials say the decision is about more than the environment.
We have also considered our responsibility to global sustainable goals as part of achieving sustainability in our development by balancing between development and environmental consideration. Imagine the income level.
Kenyan and UN officials say the loss of the plastic bag can be a gain for small businesses that are creating plastic bag alternatives.
Even if you look at the job perspectives, you look at the green jobs, that all this new niche of circular economy, of blue economy, will also open to citizens. It's a wonderful opportunity.
Kenyans are generally supportive of the idea.
And I'm really happy to acquire this bag, an eco-friendly bag. I think we need to adopt an environment that is fit for our children in accordance to the MDGs. And we are calling upon very many people actually to adopt it. It has its negatives and positives, but we need to see the positive in it and in this adoption.
People who work at small businesses like Mumo wa Aka that weave plastic bag alternatives see the positive side.
I'm a member of Mumu Oaxaca self-help group, and I do basket weaving. Since I started, I have been able to educate my 2 children. Since these plastic bags have been banned, I expect we have more sales, and this will enable us to educate our children and also help each other.
The new law imposes a fine of anywhere from $184 to $368 for people who defy the ban. In more serious cases, judges can impose jail time for people who are caught using plastic bags. Kevin Enochs, VOA News.
It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Is this the taxi of the future? We'll be right back.
يتشاوروا إلى أقصى الحدود مع من هم ليسوا اليوم.
Every song has a different meaning to each person that hears it and interprets it differently. Border Crossings is unique in that it lets the listeners decide what we're playing. But we bring in guests so that our audience has access to some of the biggest names in pop music today, and we reach out to the audience each and every day in different ways.
And welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. In what looks like a typical office setting, a woman uses the central processing unit of a computer as a hot pan to make Chinese pancakes. That's just one of the many innovative videos from a YouTube star who calls herself Miss Year. Chinese hot pot pancakes and flame-grilled fish are all cooked using everyday objects found in an office. The 23-year-old first uploaded her videos onto Weibo, China's micro-blogging service, in January 2017, which quickly garnered millions of views. Her team expects to make over $7.5 million a year through product placement, one of the sources of income for online video content makers. Next up, Dubai is edging closer to its goal of launching a pioneering hover taxi service, with the authorities announcing a successful concept: flight without passengers. Dubai's Road and Transport Authority says the prototype can fly for 30 minutes at a maximum speed of 100 kilometers per hour. The hover taxi will eventually be integrated into the city's existing public transport network, which includes a metro system, tramway, and buses. Passengers will be able to book their autonomous air taxi and track its arrival and route using an app. And finally, savvy young people in Kosovo, one of Europe's most isolated countries, are embracing cryptocurrencies. The technology serves as a ticket to join a wider world from which they are often excluded from with borders and visas. Virtual currencies, a form of unregulated digital money not issued or guaranteed by the central banks, are enjoying increasing popularity. The weak economy and hard living standards in poor countries like Kosovo, where opening a new business is not easy, adds to the interest in the new Bitcoin market. Kosovo is the first country in the region with an ATM for virtual currencies, and that's what's trending today. Now, U.S. National Parks traveler Micah Maya wrapped up his journey through southwestern Texas with a visit to Big Bend National Park, a vast landscape known for its stark desert beauty and the scenic Rio Grande that forms part of the boundary between the U.S. and Mexico. He shared highlights of his 4 action-packed days with VOA's Julie Tabo.
This is the view out of my side window.
As National Parks traveler Micah Meyer drove through Big Bend National Park in southwestern Texas, he was immediately struck by its beauty.
Oh my gosh, is this place real?
It's just this magical landscape that has really evolved over time.
That magical landscape covers more than 324,000 hectares, ranging from dry, hot desert to cool mountains, and part of the Rio Grande, which forms the natural 1,600-kilometer-long border between Texas and Mexico.
It's like something straight out of a Wild Wild West movie.
The park's varied landscape is home to a wide variety of plant and animal species. Micah got to enjoy some of that diversity up close at the Rio Grande Village Nature Trail on the banks of the river. After his hike, Micah immersed himself in the park's ancient hot springs, which are believed to have healing powers.
Not the worst way to spend an afternoon.
On day 2 of his trip, Micah got to wade across the Rio Grande into Mexico.
I'm approaching the middle, and it's still not even up to my knees. We have successfully walked across the Rio Grande from the United States to Mexico. Come on, buddy. Come on.
He rode into town on a horse.
¿Cómo estás? Bien, ¿y tú? Bien, bien. After entering the town of Boquillas, visitors are supposed to check in at Mexican customs.
And after doing that, he stopped for lunch.
I'm starting out with 3 vegetarian tacos and corn tortillas.
After wading back across the Rio Grande, Micah headed for the Chisos Mountains.
It was dry, and my glasses were fogging up, and I had sunscreen in my eyes, and I was sweating, and my nose was running because it was cold up there. I felt so miserable, but it was so gorgeous that I couldn't help but keep a pep in my step and keep going.
Come on, Micah. You can do it.
He made it all the way to Emery Peak, the highest point in Big Bend National Park.
Whew. Did it.
By day 3, Micah was ready for some canoeing. Starting at the mouth of the Santa Elena Canyon, he got to enjoy a float down the Rio Grande River, at least for part of the journey. The water was so shallow in some areas, the canoes had to be towed.
One of the guides is pulling 2 canoes at the same time to help get people over these really shallow parts. So it was not like the wild rafting excursion you might imagine. It was more like a very shallow canoe float.
On his 4th and final day in the park, Micah, who's on a mission to visit all 400-plus national park sites, was taken on a long and bumpy tour through some of Big Bend's most remote areas.
I was exhausted and disgustingly dirty and dusty, but also fulfilled that I had really fully experienced this park and got to see portions of it that I never imagined I would get to.
After his time in Big Bend National Park, Micah says it's now one of his favorites. Julie Tabo, VOA News, Washington.
And that's our show for today. Good night from Washington.